Hi Devapriya.
Hi Manbir, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hope you're doing well.
All well, all well. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you for
so much
having me
for
here.
thank you so much for taking time, and thank you so much for to people who are joining us live. I'm just looking at comments and requesting people to just ping us that whether you can see us live today or not, whichever medium you're looking at, maybe Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. If you can just ping us and tell us that we are actually live, so that will be really awesome. Thank you, Devpriya. I know you have a busy day today, personally and professionally. So thank you so much for taking time today.
Not at all, Manbir. It's such a pleasure to be here. You're doing very impactful work in the leadership development space, and anything I can do to sort of
Thank
join
you.
the conversation always there.
Thank you. And welcome everyone to episode 35 of Growth Mindset Conversations. And let me introduce our special guest today, Devapriya Khanna. She's a senior marketing leader, an ex corporate executive, and a successful purpose driven entrepreneur. After spending 18 years in corporate, she got into her entrepreneurship journey in 2014 when she founded 212 Degree Brand Lab. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Devapriya.
Absolutely.
As a trainer and a consultant, Devapriya has delivered several hours of transformating interventions for corporates, business houses, startups, educational institutes, and served over 5,000 plus corporate and business leaders. She's also the founder of UK based Connexicus Global, an accelerator and professional community for women in business. Thank you, Devpriya, and you have such an amazing profile. I just took few snapshots from that profile, so I'm sorry if I'm missing on something.
No, that's a very generous introduction. Thanks again.
Thank you for all of you who are with us today on the show. And Devpriya, as the show name is Growth Mindset Conversation, my first question always is a hungry question. I'm hungry to understand growth mindset. So, what is growth mindset for Devpriya?
Interesting, interesting. So, a lot has been written and discussed about the term growth mindset. To me, growth mindset is actually very simple. It means simply to have an open mind, to be positive, and to embrace both success and failure as opportunities for growth, knowing that you have the inherent ability to always bounce forward, bounce forward, not bounce back. And when you ask me this question, a very interesting memory comes up in my mind. Years ago, when my younger daughter was still in play school,
Mm-hmm.
I was attending sports day, and you know these sack race, where the kids get into
Yeah.
a sack, and it's like, yeah. So the
Yeah.
sack race was going on, little kids, and there was this one kid who had fallen behind and was struggling, but that kid would just not give up. He every time he would get up, he would take a few leaps, and then he would stumble and fall. But you know what he did? Everyone finished the race. This guy went on, right? And then when he couldn't carry himself forward like that, he went on all fours, and then he scrambled and reached the finishing line in whichever way he could. So many years have passed, but this
Awesome.
is still stuck with me, because to me that was growth mindset. The kid was
Absolutely.
resilient, yeah, innovative, determined to complete the task, and finally managed to get all the attention and the applause. So for me, little things. You don't really need to be a CEO or a change maker or a leader to be demonstrating growth mindset. You can learn from kids as well. And for me, growth mindset is a must-have ingredient for long-term success. It's one of those non-negotiable things, because and I try hard to consciously build this in myself, as well as in my daughters and in my team members. And I look for it in the people that I choose to work with. So that for me is growth mindset, Manbir.
Awesome, Devapriya. I loved what you said. It's a non-negotiable. So what I'm understanding is, it's some people think it's nice to have. So we are doing our job description, and then growth mindset is nice to have. So it's not nice to have. It's need to have for your growth, right?
I
Yeah, yeah,
completely think so. I completely think so.
yeah,
And like I said, I look out for this trait in people that I choose to work with. And for
yeah.
me, building it consciously, being aware that I need to um, keep this growth mindset alive in me. It's not easy, but one,
It's not easy.
you have to be very conscious and aware that this is something
Yeah,
that is non-negotiable for you. So that's what I do.
yeah,
I mean, see, the thing is that you will always have tough days. In fact, you'll have more tough days than easy days, as we all know. This is exactly what we were
absolutely.
discussing a while ago. But the thing
Yeah,
is that you just don't unpack and stay there in that situation, right? You fall down, you get up, you move on. You know that you have to move on, so you create that uh, that energy and that capability in yourself that you have to move on. So that's what it is for me.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. And that shows your growth minds actually learning from a small kid and elaborating in such an articulated way. Thank you so much. And when we talk about your special subject, which is executive presence for leaders, so I'll tell you my experience. So in my experience of working with leaders, many times it has come as a feedback. So you should have executive presence, and many times people think that okay, it's like having coat and tie, and for women having that hair proper done, and maybe standing tall. So
Yeah.
people really get confused what is executive presence. So let's today demystify what is executive presence for corporate leaders. And my question to you is, what does it mean to have executive presence?
Right, right. So I'm sure we can all think of some people who truly command the room, right? They can make heads turn, they can get their voice to be heard, they evoke respect, they have followers.
Yeah,
These leaders are magnetic because they exude executive presence. Now, what is executive presence? Executive presence often comes across as something very mysterious, like an X factor, an aura that some people seem to effortlessly exhibit. But the good news is that its executive presence is not a mystery. On the contrary, it's a science and art. And you'd be wondering, how is it a science and art? So let's simplify this, and I'm going to make it very simple because there's a lot of you know lot of the lot of gray area around this whole thing. But what I want to tell you is that in its simplest terms, executive presence is about your ability to inspire, influence, and impact your stakeholders. And just note these three. I mean, actually, that this is all that there is for a leader. You want to inspire people, you want to influence them, and you want to create impact on your internal and external stakeholders. So be it your team, your leaders, your peers, maybe your investors, your partners, your vendors, um, at every point in time you need to look at these: inspiration, influence, and impact. And this is executive presence. I call it a unique combination of gravitas plus substance or expertise plus communication skills. Because you may have all of this, but if you're not able to impactfully or effectively communicate your gravitas, then again it remains um, a missing link. And
yeah,
like you just mentioned, that you started so beautifully by saying that people think that it's all about style, and executive presence has got a bad rap because of this, but it
yeah.
is a myth. It is completely a myth that executive presence is just style, image, charisma. No, it's not that. If leaders have style but not substance or expertise, they may be perceived as what we call empty suits, you know
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
frivolous
yeah,
on the face of it.
yeah.
And one more thing, because you asked me this, one more thing I want to say is that executive presence is not really about you. So it's not vanity metrics. It's not about being on show. Executive presence is more about how others are perceiving you. And
Hmm.
it's definitely about confidence. It goes without saying that it's about confidence. But executive presence is less about how confident you are in your own abilities. But of course you need to feel confident, because it's an inside out job, but
Yeah,
it's more about how others are confident in your abilities.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
see,
It's
so it's
others'
like
perception.
it's others perception, but at the same time you're creating those perceptions, so you can't say that I'm like this only. These days it's this whole authentic word is just
Hmm.
an excuse to say that, look, I'm just going to be how I am. But executive presence also is authenticity with responsibility, courage and grace under fire, presence of mind. So these some
Yeah,
factors are very important. And and Manbir, every leader, you work so closely with leaders, this is what you do. Every leader who wants to be ready for the top job, or has moved into a senior role and wants to make a bigger impact, must focus on building or enhancing his or her executive presence consciously. It can't be something at the back of the mind that I'll do it one day. You have to
yeah,
work
yeah,
at it. And
yeah,
therefore executive presence is an inherent part of your leadership brand, and collectively put together it becomes, for any progressive organization, they should consider building executive presence in their leaders, in their next level. Even I see people, great progressive multinational organizations investing in their people who are joining, management trainees and all. And executive presence is a vital part of the orientation program and the training. So
yeah.
employer brand, it becomes a very important constitution of employer brand as well. So it's not just it's not just an empty suit. It's not just about how fashionably or stylishly you're showing up. It's a lot deeper than that, and it needs a lot more work.
I'm loving what you're saying, inspire, influence, and impact. And the most importantly, it's not for you, it's for other people. How do they perceive you? And before I get on to the next question, I will really, really encourage my audience here. Thank you so much for joining us live. And do ask your questions. And also, if you don't have questions, do bring in your perspective on executive presence, So anything which you want to say, that will be really awesome to hear that. See that, what do you think about executive presence? And Devapriya, I know I'm curious to ask that you talked about leaders who says that in the name of authenticity, I'm like this only. And believe me, I work with a lot of leaders in tech industry, and a lot of people do say that I'm like this only. I am
Yes.
here because I'm competent enough. I'm here because I know the best. So what is your message for those leaders who are not even ready to think about executive presence? So maybe in other words, what happens when leaders do not have executive presence?
Okay. Very, very interesting question. And I'm actually, so we speak a lot with such people.
Yeah,
Tech companies, large tech companies, are now identifying that the top job and the top few layers, you've got there because you have substance, because you have expertise. I mean, there's no point even saying that I'm here because I have all of this. That's a given. That's how
yeah,
you're there. But what is that extra degree that will take you from ordinary to outstanding? What is that missing link that will increase your effectiveness? Um, it's one thing to say be authentic, but what you have to consciously work to cultivate that authenticity, and like I said, frame it in the context of responsibility. You can't be
yes,
irresponsible towards your
yes,
people, towards everyone. So I'll just give you like it's a short story or just an example. I recently concluded personal brand consulting sessions with two clients. It's just happened. One, the vice president of a global consumer giant, and the other, the founder of an established business, so like a good prominent business owner. Both dynamic and successful leaders, yet each one facing the intrinsic challenge of being stuck in achieving results and getting to the next level of their career or business. So tell me, what was missing? What do you think, Manveer? What do you think was missing in this whole thing? And the problem was same for both. So one is a business owner
yeah.
and the other is a corporate leader.
I'm sure their
Um,
presence, their articulation, I'm sure their connection with their authentic connection with the people. So that's what I can think of.
Exactly. Yeah, you're bang on. See, they were, and this is a real life situation, and there are multiple such situations that I face on an ongoing basis. Um, they were not being able to effectively engage their internal stakeholders,
Yeah.
right? Their ideas were not getting accepted, their leadership skills were coming under question, and results were not getting achieved. So when the whole communication piece is missing,
Mhm.
when you're not being able to evoke that credibility, when you're not being able to conduct yourself under fire, gracefully under fire, when you're buckling down under stress, then what message are you passing to people around you? Okay, so
Yeah.
in a nutshell, I mean, there are so many case studies like this that I could go on forever, but in a nutshell, I would say, just to answer your question, that without executive presence, you lose out on opportunities, opportunities, and going back to the three I's, going lose opportunity of influencing, impacting, and inspiring your stakeholders. You cannot effectively communicate your ideas, opinions, thoughts, and decisions. Very important. You fail to set standards for integrity, ethics, and boundaries. And this
Yeah.
this again is something non-negotiable. And
Yeah.
bottom line is that you fail to demonstrate a strong, clear leadership brand. So
Yeah.
you see, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot happening if you're not able to manage your
Yeah.
executive presence. And
Yeah. Yeah.
executive presence, again, at every point, I want to add that it's an inside out job. It's not the suit that you wear.
No. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so attached
Absolutely.
to that. So this word presence also has presence of mind attached to it,
Yeah.
which is not
Absolutely.
about how you show up physically, but how you show up as your whole self,
Yeah.
how you
Yeah.
present yourself as your whole self.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
It's
know, does that
exactly
answer your
inside out.
question in a way?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's exactly inside out job. So I think so we have wonderful comments. Somebody said influencing, impacting, and
Sandra?
inspiring. So Sandra loved it. So I'm sure, I think it's very easy to learn kind of a framework, and also I think another perception people have, that executive presence can take you farther from people, from your team. But I think it's the opposite. It brings you closer to the team. It brings you
Yeah.
closer. Your connections are closer. So I think that's another myth people have. And I'm assuming that there are leaders listening to our watching our show, listening to our conversation, and they're convinced, Devapriya, that they need to have executive presence. How do they know whether they have executive presence or not, actually?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go back one. Just now, you said something that people need to be convinced. I think people, leaders inherently know. They know it because you're living with yourself every day. You're handling these situations every day. Today we call it executive presence, but you've always known that there's something missing. That one little thing that's missing. It's just that a lot of people don't prioritize cultivating or building executive presence. Uh,
Yeah.
one doesn't need to be convinced. You know in your heart that you know what you need to develop in a way,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But it's just
Yeah.
that taking that step to say that, yeah, I'm going to work on it, because it's not something frivolous, but it's a must have, and it's really an inherent part of building myself as a very strong and good leader.
Yeah, yeah, and I would like to add something here. I mean, I hope that's right for you. Right, you think you're right.
Yeah.
People can also take feedback on that. If you're not clear that whether I have executive presence or not, or maybe, as you said, your corporate branding, you can check. How do you align with your corporate brand? Because your messaging is, as you said, it could not be empty suits. So it could
Right,
be
right.
aligning with the big picture, aligning with your corporate branding, aligning with what you are here for. So you can also take feedback as a leader, right?
One should, of course. If you're
Yeah,
not, then you're not being true to your own success. You're just, again, actually an empty suit. You're not
yeah,
investing in your own development. One has to be realistic. I think leaders of today are very realistic as well. They're more people than suits, I think.
yeah, yeah,
I'm seeing
yeah.
that more and more. Sorry, you asked me what happens. You asked me, how do they know? How do people know that
Yes.
they have or they don't have executive presence? So I would say that there are two ways of doing it very simply. One is to be brutally honest, introspect, and do a self audit. And I'll mention eight questions that I typically ask people to audit themselves on when you're doing a self audit.
Mhm.
The other thing is that you do a sort of, you ask some trusted people. Um,
Yeah,
One is self audit, another one is taking feedback, like you mentioned just now, taking feedback. And we,
yeah,
the starting point that we look at, we have a proprietary 3D kind of uh, framework where we do this audit. And that's the starting point of every leadership branding. But let me tell you what those 8 questions are, and anybody listening in, and even you, anybody can ask yourself these questions. So these 8 questions are very simple. Can you command the room? You know, do people listen when you speak? Can you take quick decisions? Um, are you empathetic towards the people that you work with? So, empathy is a huge part of executive presence. Then I mentioned this. Can you maintain poise under pressure? Are you comfortable in your own skin? And Manbir, you'd be so surprised to know that many people are still not. They could have become
absolutely.
CEOs, but they are not. And
Yeah,
do people trust you? Very important again. And
I
you
love that
know
question.
this. Trust is a very,
Yeah,
very big part, is a very big
yeah,
indicator of whether you're exhibiting gravitas or executive presence. And most important is, are you mindful? Are you cultivating mindfulness? Are you working on your inside? Are you doing an inside job, or is it just, from day to day looking at your laptop and delivering your targets and just being an executive, right?
yeah,
Are you being mindful? So these are the 8 questions that one can always ask themselves.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. I think these 8 questions, I would love to. I have not noted it down, Depriya. If you can send me, I would love to put
I
it in
will
the notes of the show, so that would be
definitely. I
really
will. I
great.
will do it. Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
as we are coming close to the end of the show, I'm really curious to ask, how can leaders actually practically have executive presence? How can imbibe? Do you have some framework or some, kind of to-do list for leaders?
Yeah, I mean, see, the starting point really is to, like you said, acknowledge that there's something missing.
Yeah.
Executive presence is something, and even if it's not missing, it's a continuous work in progress, right? You never stop working on yourself. So you may be the sharpest cookie in the box, but you're not perfect. So there's always room for improvement. And for those who know that they need to build on it, come to terms with it and seek help. I see many people in a lot of global leaders now investing in this. I see companies investing in this, but we still have miles to go. People don't want to take out time, or they don't want to invest. So my first thing is that acknowledge that executive presence is something that needs to be worked on. See, the good thing is that executive presence is a skill, not a trait, which means that it's something you can cultivate and build. And you know this, you have so many statistics with you, Manbir. I was reading recently a study by the Center of Talent Innovation found that executive presence accounts for 26% of what it takes for a leader to get promoted. Now you might say that it's just 26%, but if you look at it,
Yeah.
my god, it's 26%, right? And these are
Yeah.
studies. And a
Yeah.
Harvard Business Review study also found that, let's talk about women leaders here. 45% of the women surveyed by that study said that being perceived as having executive presence was more important to being promoted than having specific qualifications. So my take on that is that, for me, having those specific qualifications is a given, but over and above
Yeah.
that, you need to have it. So um, several studies have found that developing executive presence was one of the top two reasons executives received coaching
Yes.
sponsored by their companies.
Yeah.
So executive presence coaching is a huge part of executive leadership coaching. So I
Yeah.
would say that there are certain things that which I said, that be mindful, develop your communication skills, sort of exhibit empathy, be aware of how you're coming across, all of that. Do self audit, ask yourself questions, ask others questions about how they're perceiving you. But bottom line is, I think one should consider companies and leaders should consider getting professional help or working with consultants who can audit your EP level, assess your strengths and development areas, build a roadmap to bridge the intentions perceptions gap. It's very
Yep.
important. It can be a
Yeah.
like a deal breaker, the intentions perception gap, if it's very wide. And then
Yes.
work on building your EP inside out. It's no longer so empathy, EQ. These are very very important things to really work on, because these days, like I said, the whole, and you're working with leaders every day. The whole essence of leadership has changed. Leaders are now, it's not so long about, not so much about women having to man up and men continuing to be who they are. I think leaders are now embracing both their feminine and masculine sides, gender agnostic, and
Yeah.
you're more holistic leader. So these softer skills actually become the hard skills.
I call them human leaders. So that's the
Human
framework I
leaders,
have. So
yeah.
human leaders, it has to be wonderful, Devapriya. So we have a couple of questions in the paucity of time, so I'll try to take some of the questions. And of course, some of you, Ruchi and a couple of others who has missed those 8 questions, I will make sure that, we will have that in the show notes for YouTube and LinkedIn, both of them. And Facebook, of course. And we have one more question from Ajanta. Can you please sum up and actually tell us about all those things that would help a person to get the desired executive branding in totally, especially totality, especially a person who's new in the corporate world? I think you pretty much have answered this
Yes,
question
yes.
already. So, anything you want to say more, Devapriya, on this?
No, all I would say is that prioritize this, and
Yes.
set time aside for it. And work on your leadership brand every single day. That's
Yeah.
what I would say. I mean, it's famously said that your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. How is it
Absolutely.
that you want to be perceived?
Yeah.
Most of the
Yeah.
decisions are
Yeah.
happening about you when you're not in the room. So it's very
Absolutely.
important to be on brand, to be really aware of how you want to be perceived, what your values are, what your purpose is, what your strengths are, what you want to be
Yeah.
known for in the
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
context,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
being
also,
and being
yeah.
present about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, absolutely being present about it. And I was about to add that it's also having that growth mindset, which continuously tells you that, how aware are you and now what else you are doing it. It's not like a constant line. Okay, you have reached here and now you don't have to do anything. It's a constant evolving thing. So you really have to be working
Yes.
constantly and consistently on yourself.
Right, we're all work in progress, and I
Absolutely.
can think of the topmost leaders, political leaders, business leaders, CXOs, so many examples in front of us who may be the epitome of having executive presence, but they're still working on it, and eventually it's like it's a muscle that you have to keep working on. If you don't work on it, and this is something that I want to tell Ajanta because of that question. It's not something that you do, okay, today I'm going to work on my executive presence. It's something that becomes part of your habit. You consciously cultivate it over time, and then it becomes who you are, and that's when it becomes effortless, and that's when
Yeah.
you become that person. Like when we started, we spoke about that person who just walks into the room, commands that room, inspires,
Yeah.
influences, and impacts. It just comes effortlessly.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. I think it is a topic we can have n number of questions and we can
I
have this
can.
conversation
Yeah,
going
I
on
certainly
because
can.
yeah. So I too love the conversation, Devipriya. Thank you so much for the wonderful insights and the knowledge you have shared with all of us, and I really appreciate the time you have spent with us today.
Thank you, Manbir. It's so clear that you do some path-breaking work in this field, because you've picked a topic which is, like I said, a soft skill, a soft topic, which is actually a hard requirement, prerequisite in today's leaders.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
a wonderful topic. I think a lot of people would benefit from going deeper into this topic. And you and I think today, if we've even sowed the seeds of this thought
Yes.
in the minds of some leaders, we've spent a good 30 minutes.
Yeah,
It's been
and
worthwhile.
this thread is live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. You can ask your questions still there, and Devapriya and I would definitely would love to answer those questions. And thank you everyone from bottom of my heart for joining us live, and keep applying these learnings. Do keep doing this stuff. And if you like, I mean, you would like to discuss any specific subject on this show, if you want to hear from an expert on anything specific, do send me a message on LinkedIn. That will be awesome. I would be very happy to discuss that subject. See you all again in the next episode of Growth Mindset Conversations. Thank you so much and have a nice day. Bye bye. Thank you, Devapriya. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye.